in the last few days, it's been chilly and bright here in Abuja, 26 degrees centigrade. Good morning. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Neota Igbe.
Good morning and welcome. I'm Kayla Megwa. Today, we will be touching on a lot of things. Some things that we allowed to simmer for a little bit before we start talking about them. Other things, hot. Some of us haven't slept. I think yesterday I didn't sleep. I was waiting for Kamala to give her concession speech, because I wanted to see if she was going to be gracious in defeat. And we'll be talking about that. Our guest has been here for the past 30 minutes waiting for us to start this conversation. But that's not what we're leading with today. We will start off today by taking you to something that is a front burner issue, but a beautiful sight. We are going to Kainji Dam this morning. Oh, Nelta.
Oh, yeah. So you can imagine when you hear things like the grids collapse for the 8th, 7th, 8th, 9th.
10.
I didn't count that. No,
10.
Kayla, this last
now.
one, it was just a disturbance. It wasn't a collapse.
It was a faint. It's not collapse.
It was a disturbance.
Okay.
But anyway, this facility you see here, I think is one of the first hydroelectric power dams in the country. Actually, I hope I'm correct about that.
Yes, you're correct.
And it's been there since it was set up, and it's been working. Sometimes because of water levels, you find that it's not working optimally, but this is the overview of the Kainji Dam. This country is blessed.
It is. And blessed to people who should do the things.
No, people
right
who
way.
are doing the right things too, Kayla. People who are doing the right things.
But we need to ensure that as a group, as a people, that we are pushing together. Not while we're pushing forward. Some people are pushing us backwards. While we're fasting, some people are eating food under the bed. We have to change. I'm tired, I'm tired. I think we're going to have a conversation about this grid collapse at some point today. But, let's talk to you a bit about this place. It's in Niger, It's across the Niger River in Niger State, central Nigeria, not too far from here. And of course, this construction actually started in 1964. It took 4 years to get this ready. It took 4 years to get this dam ready. And at the time, it cost about $209 million US dollars. The equivalent now is about 1.5 billion, And a lot of that money, really, I think, according to reports, a quarter of that amount was used to resettle the people that live in this place. Because, of course, people had to move for this construction to be done, So a very historic bit of the country. And this dam was actually designed to have a generating capacity of 960 megawatts. Yeah, but only 8 of the 12 turbines have been installed. Installed in the first, forget the working bit, only 8 of the 12 turbines have been installed. And that actually reduces the capacity of this dam to about 760 megawatts. Generates electricity for all the large cities in the country. And some of the electricity is sold to other countries like Niger, And then the occasional droughts have made water flow unpredictable, and it diminishes this dam's electrical output. But, one that a lot of people are still looking at. There's a lot of maintenance that goes on here, and that capacity to generate more electricity is one that will be talked about today. Not just on this program. I hear that today there's going to be a briefing, but we'll talk about that when it's time for happening today, because we have to be able to understand what's happening to power supply in the country, why it's so epileptic, why it goes up, down, it collapses, faints, gets dizzy sometimes, is hungry sometimes. There are so many explanations as to what's going on, but we'll be getting to that when we start to talk a bit about the newspapers today, because the Minister of Power is also in the news, so we'll be talking about that, Nelta.
When you talk about the Kainji Dam and the facts around the Kainji Dam, what strikes me most is when it was built. Yes, the cost then and now, $209 million at that time, and what we have now. But it's the fact that till now, over 50 years, and only 12 turbines have been installed. I mean, 8 out of the 12 turbines designed for that dam have been installed. What's going on?
What's the story?
Who needs to answer questions here? Were the contracts given? where the contracts awarded for these turbines and they're still not supplied and installed? Or is it that the turbines have arrived and they are somewhere in a corner and still not installed? Questions need to be answered. But Kayla, as you said earlier, this country is blessed. It's like a football team that has individual players, everyone playing to score the ball. But it will be better if all the players work together as a team to get to that mark of scoring and winning the trophy. And I think Nigeria is headed in that direction. So it's tough. And some people would like, Nelta, what are you saying? But I'll say it again. Nigeria is headed in that direction where everybody is working together. As painful and as annoying as it may be, some in opposition, some in government, some not in government, private sector, individuals, all working together towards a goal. But the question some would ask is, what is the goal? The goal is Nigeria. And we can all get there. Tell ourselves some truth, like I'm telling Kayla some truth. Tell ourselves some truth and work towards that place. So Kainji Dam for you, that's what is on your screen. Oh, I'm on the screen right now. But Kainji Dam is what we're talking about in the face of the fainting national grid. And some states are thinking independent grids, or as the Minister of Power suggested, regional grids. That will make it a lot easier. Gombe State, for instance, has signed a deal for 100 megawatts of, is it 100 megawatts of solar power, solar energy supply, and all of that. Different states can come up based on the Electricity Act of 2023.
I think what was happening to me and you this morning is because we've been listening to the American people for the past few days. And hearing them all talk about America first, you know, even in the midst of defeat, we're still hearing them talk about our country, and it really got us in our feelings this morning.
They shouldn't wonder.
Yes,
it's about Nigeria.
Someone said to me yesterday that our mission should be stronger than our Judases. Our missions should be stronger than our Judases. We'll address those people in a short while. But right now, it's time for us to take a look at what the papers are saying. Stay with us. Our newspaper review this morning starts with the Guardian newspaper. Low expectations, optimism herald Trump's second coming. The U.S. elections there, the main story. More of that on page 6 of the Guardian. Nigerian Tribune leads with all marketers tackling Dangote in court. Page 16 has more details, saying no to planned monopoly in energy sector. Now that's one that many people are going to be talking about for quite a while. The Daily Times. Minister attributes grid collapses to vandalism and lack of maintenance. Says the federal government is taking the issue seriously, and there's supposed to be a briefing on that today. But more of that story from the Daily Times newspaper. Daily Trust. Bandits abduct over 50 people in Zamfara again. Place 150 million naira levy on residents. Kill 10 farmers in Niger. And the government says we're working hard to tackle the problem. The Daily Trust has more details. Nigerian News Direct. Tinubu, Nigerian Governors Forum, others mourn the death of Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Taoreed Lagbaja. Page 3 with more details there from the Nigerian News Direct. Senate leaders, NGF, others laud his courage and commitment to national security. He was an outstanding officer and patriot, says former President Muhammadu Buhari. And the acting Chief of Army Staff, Oluyede, hails late Lagbaja as a courageous and selfless leader. Page 3 has more details. The Blueprint newspaper this morning. I'll bring America to a golden age, Trump vows amid Middle East turmoil. And of course, we're seeing that 16 months after appointment, Chief of Army Staff Lagbaja dies at 56. President Tinubu orders flags at half-mast this morning. The Daily Independent. Tributes for Lagbaja as Tinubu orders flags flown at half-mast. Akpabio Oluremi Tinubu Defense Minister Oyebanji Mba Makinde Oberewori more. The Vanguard newspaper. United States poll. Be president to all, Kamala charges Trump as Tinubu, Biden, and world leaders and others hail him. More on that from page 15 of the Vanguard newspaper. And those are the headlines this morning.
And indeed, let's just stick one or two stories. I'll start out with the Vanguard here. And so if you see on that front page is that story. Be president to all, Kamala charges Trump. Well, they say, the one who is outside the field most times is the better coach. And the question is he seeing from all the angles? So now she's looking from the outside, say, okay, you're coming in, be a president to all. And hopefully we'll see it different. But as I say, that's a conversation for today. That's not the story I wanted to look at. And this one is a sports story. It's on page 36, sports. Morocco 2025, Ekong, Lukman, Osimhen, Simon, 19 others gear up for Benin, Rwanda. That's the story. That's the story I want to look at, especially in the phase of the, how do you say that, subsuming of the Ministry of Sports to the National Sports Commission. The director, the chairman of that commission has been talking about his plans for the sports commission, and some have advised that, look, don't make it a football commission, it's a sports commission across board. So while Nigeria is preparing for the Benin-Rwanda game, there are other sports to look at. There's tennis, there's cricket, there is handball, there's volleyball, and then there is the athletics. A couple of days ago, the court a presidential panel that looked at the Olympics, the recently concluded Olympics, asked that the AFN pays a compensation to one of the athletes because of error mistakes they made in the preparations towards that game. So while Nigeria prepares for this, let's keep our hearts united, because sports remains one of those things that keeps Nigeria united. That's it from the Vanguard.
Let's take the Daily Trust newspaper. Bandits abduct over 50 people in Zamfara. That's the lead story there. Page 3 has more details, placing 150 million naira levy on residents. 10 farmers killed in Niger. And the federal government, state governments also saying we're working hard to tackle that problem. How hard is this work? The DDM will have a briefing today on the security situation in the country. And I'm hoping that these are some of the things that will come up at that briefing today. I mean, we've been going through this for a very long time, especially in this Zamfara state. With everything we've heard the Minister of State for Defense talk about, with everything we've heard the Minister of Defense talk about, with everything we've heard the NSA talk about, with everything we've heard the governor of the state talk about, it's disappointing and a failure of governance. However you want to rub it, it is a failure of governance, and one that needs to be addressed really quickly. We cannot continue to leave our people in these situations. It's disappointing and bad for the future of our nation. Whoever is supposed to do something about this situation has to get that done quickly. Whatever collaboration is necessary to keep this part of the country safe is one that has to be done. If we're going to remain a country, then we cannot pretend that these things don't affect us. It affects all of us as a whole. So this bandit situation, something needs to be done about it, and that is where I'm going to stop talking about it right now. And hopefully we get more details on this situation when the DDMO briefing happens today. And those are some of the headlines that we're looking at today. I mean, we do have some stories going on in the country today. We have some events happening in the country, and we had talked about them. So happening today, the Minister of Power will be having a briefing on this grid collapse, this constant grid collapse, and solutions. It's happening at Powerhouse today. We'll be giving you the details at some point during the show today. You know, we'll be getting that for you. But business also has some things happening today for us. And when the business team come up, they'll be talking about the Trump presidency and what impact it will have on Nigeria's economy. So those are some of the major things that we have happening today in the country. Nelta, what are you thinking about when you look at this grid collapse story?
I'm thinking about what the law says and how the different governments, and I mean the state governments, 36 state governments, can actually key into this and make a difference for their own citizens. I mean, the law allows you, even before the new Power Act was signed into law, there was an opportunity for you to generate a certain amount of power it's called captive power. There are opportunities, and Nigeria is blessed with sunlight. Yes, we have sunlight, solar energy. There are all manner of ways you can go about. There's coal, there's hydro. All of this can be utilized, and truly the state governments need to wake up to this. So hopefully we'll see a different, I mean, what the minister suggested, regional, the different states can come together and say, okay, Kayla, you and I are neighbors. Instead of each of us putting up a generator for our house, let's get one generator to serve the two of us. And let's look at, okay, can we get some other people to join in so that we buy a bigger generator that serves the entire area? That's what some people do. Some wealthy people in their communities have gone on to buy huge generating sets. Back then, in the 80s, a former minister of agriculture in Nigeria, late Chief Ita Okobuli, bought a huge generator that was serving his entire community and his farm. So, think about it.
Well, his presentation today is a report on the resolution of incessant grid collapse. So, the Minister of Power, Adebayo Adelabu, is going to be happening at Powerhouse. We want to hear what the solutions he has and how they are going to be implemented. So that's something I'm looking forward to, and I hope you're looking forward to it as well.
We will look forward to that. We'll take a moment, and when we come back, we'll pick up that conversation. The happenings in the U.S., the Trump administration kicking off in January 2025, how would that affect Nigeria? What are the lessons to learn? What's the way forward? We'll be back in a moment. Don't go away.
Donald Trump has been declared winner of the U.S. presidential election, affirming his claim to victory at the early hours of Wednesday morning, also declaring an unprecedented and powerful mandate as he addressed supporters in Florida, despite many states still counting votes then.
This was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time. There's never been anything like this in this country, and maybe beyond. And now it's going to reach a new level of importance because we're going to help our country heal.
Trump's victory underscores how deep voters' frustrations were surrounding inflation and immigration. Republicans' two top issues this election cycle. Trump promised to fix America's borders and fix everything about the country.
We're going to have to seal up those borders, and we're going to have to let people come into our country. We want people to come back in, but we have to let them come back in, but they have to come in legally.
Some of those numbers, we're hoping to get another batch.
He's the oldest U.S. presidential nominee and will become the nation's second oldest president. He faced two assassination attempts, one at a Pennsylvania campaign rally in July and another in September near one of his Florida golf courses. The win offers both political and legal protection for Trump. He's cast his indictment in 4 criminal cases as a political attack, vowing retribution against perceived enemies and embracing increasingly dystopian rhetoric. He became the first U.S. president to be convicted of a crime in May in New York City and was the first president to be impeached twice. He denies any wrongdoing.
There was no crime.
His vow to alter the U.S. relations with NATO and to resolve the Ukraine war with possible peace talks that might require Kyiv to cede territory. He said Hamas must be crushed and vowed to be tougher on Iran, but he's given few details on policy proposals. Amarachi Ubani, Channel Television News.
Come back. Yeah, indeed it was. The reactions to that victory across the globe, different, some for, some against, some sad, some happy, some not leaving their houses, some going into a forced fast, some angry, some just, whatever the reactions might be. There are implications to this victory of President Trump returning to the White House for the second time, twice impeached and twice not removed from office, tried in court, acquitted, some cases pending, and all of that. So a mixed bag of issues around President Donald Trump, but he is the 47th President of the United States of America to be sworn in January 2025. To help us look into all of this, we have here in our studio Mr. Jake Ekpele. I've added Professor Dr. Chief Jake Ekpele, founder, TAF Africa. Thank you for joining us.
You know, whatever you give me,
we can add prophet to it.
Tell them what you have.
And joining us virtually from Yenagoa in Bayelsa State is Soala Jumbo, a legal practitioner with 19 years experience and former NBA Yenagoa Vice Chairman, an expert in electoral litigations. Soala, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning. Great to be here.
Good to have you here. So let's start off with you, Mr. Pele. In that report Amarachi produced, she talked about him being, I think, the oldest presidential nominee and the second oldest president of the U.S. after Biden. But the build-up to that election was, some say turbulent, some say it was just what it was meant to be. Twice attempted assassinations, and also on the other side, Vice President Kamala also having her own issues as well. How would you describe the build-up and the final result when he came in?
Well, thank you for having me. Good to see you, Kelly.
Good morning.
Now, here's the thing. For me, what happened on Tuesday, the 5th of November, is a case of gender parity on the ballot, a case of race on the ballot, a case of nationalism, but also the case of core value, a particular political party that is focusing on a particular core value, laced with religion. For instance, you know that the Republicans was responsible for pulling down the Roe v. Wade, which gave women the right to abortion and all that. And of course, everybody thought that that alone would have nailed it for the Democrats. And so what this election has also mirrored, Neil, is the fact that the gender equality that the Lights of America preaches, we're beginning to see the gap, a crack, because I believe that part of the reason why, this is my personal opinion, that Kamala Harris lost this election, it can slightly be attributed to the fact that she's a woman. And the question is America ready for a woman president? The two that have tried these exalted offices and failed is a clear indication that peradventure we can begin to think that America is not ready for a woman president.
In other words, America is not living what it preaches?
That's what it is. That's what it is, without gainsaying. I had expected them to take the lead, just like they took the lead in getting the first black president. I'd expected them to take the lead in getting the first woman president.
Let's see if Soala will agree with you. Soala, you heard Mr. Pele talk about the way the build-up to the elections and the issues that came to play and how eventually it turned out. Do you agree with him that America is not living what it preaches?
Well, not entirely. For one, I do not believe that Vice President Kamala lost the election because she's a woman. I think America is ready for a female president. I mean, the fact that Hillary Clinton was able to win the popular vote, attests to that fact. She lost the election at the Electoral College. Now, I think that Kamala's problem, began, in the way she was nominated as a Democrat Party nominee. It wasn't really a democratic process. And then she had some weaknesses as a candidate. Throughout the entire campaign, she didn't do a single press conference as a formal press conference. Everything about her seemed to be rehearsed, and she wasn't, I think that Americans recognized that she probably was not ready to lead and she was not the right first female president. And I think that's what happened. at the end of the day, yes.
I mean, hold on.
I'm weighing on that.
Well, okay. So before he weighs in on that, I want to be able to talk with you a little bit more about the figures, because I think a lot of the things that we're hearing this morning, I think the way we feel about how the campaign went and things that we heard, are there figures backing your claims? Because based on the figures and polls that have been made, it was basically a situation where the focus really was on the economy. That was what in many ways determined, the voter turnout and the participation of the American people, the economy, and her ability to communicate her plans for economic growth. For many people, they felt it was lacking. So she lost out on bases that are typically won by Democrats. Latinos, for instance, especially Latino men, Hispanic men. Those are the demographics, and the younger generation, and inability to connect with those demographics. What do you make of these polls? And juxtaposing that with your thoughts on what made her not clench this particular election, despite the fact, as Mr. Jekepele said, that the reversal of Roe v. Wade by the Tinubu administration, and for me, myself included, I thought that was it. She was going to win because every woman would vote for her. What do you think happened here?
Yes, so I agree with you perfectly on the point that the economy was the main issue. And I think it should have been clear to everybody that the economy was the main issue. Now, the problem, just like you noted, is that she was unable to communicate, clear economic ideas and policies, and considering the fact that she was part of the Biden government that had brought them, the American nation, to the state in which it was, she needed to really do much more to distance herself from that administration in a very clear manner that the public can relate with. And she was unable to do that. So that's why I say that it wasn't a question of being a female president. It was a question of not being the right female president. She was unable to properly communicate, just like you said. Now, talking about the polls, I think America has a problem with polls. And I think that the lesson to be learned from this election for them, and even from the previous election, is that there's something wrong with their polling. And because you could see the polls even a day and 2 days to the election showing Kamala in the lead in so many of these swing states. And at the end of the day, what did we have? It was a total wipeout from President Trump. And the same thing happened, in the previous elections where you had Trump even down by 16 points in some polls. And then at the end of the day, he lost, maybe by a point or more. And so it shows that there's something fundamentally wrong with the polling system. I don't want to say there's anything fraudulent in it, but then there's something that needs to be looked at in the polling system.
All right, let me get Mr. Jekepele to talk about this, because so not that they're not ready for a woman, but this was not the right woman, and neither was Hillary.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it's important to underscore some facts that he was talking about. One, it's not factual to say that she never did any interview. She did several interviews. Did she do enough? Maybe she didn't, but she did several interviews. The economy has always been an issue. The Republicans hold on to economy as a talking point in every election. Go back down the history. It's not that Biden economy is not doing that well. You understand? If you look at Biden economy, compare it to Donald Trump, job creation and several indices shows that Biden is doing far more better than Trump. The thing is, the Republican machineries have come to understand how to talk to the Americans, and they do it so well.
So just so I don't lose this train of thought, isn't that something that we complain about a lot in Nigeria? We see figures that say we're doing better, but it doesn't reflect on the people. So what we heard from a lot of Americans in the run-up to this election was, I was just doing better 4 years ago. I don't know what the figures are saying. I don't know if it means that Biden is doing better or not. Just as a person, I did better 4 years ago, and that in many ways pulled many people towards Trump's side.
Well, I'm not going to argue that, but it's also important to underscore the claim that the pollsters are always wrong. I don't think so. If you follow the trend of the polling, there's always this information that, look, they are neck and neck. It wasn't in most cases that she was leading with maybe 2 points, 3.5 points and all that. In some places, yes, but I'm not here to give credence to the pollsters and to say that they are absolutely, totally correct. But let me tell you a little bit of a secret based on the research that I've done when it comes to polling in America and the way it works. Most Republicans don't subscribe to those polls. They just keep quiet. Most, especially within the white nationalist group, they don't. They just keep quiet. It's intentional to make the other camp feel that they are winning, and they will do what they will do. Even some of the people that they interviewed that said they were going to vote Kamala, at the day during the voting, they voted Donald Trump.
But
it's a mystery
when it comes to
polling,
Mr. President, when it comes to polling, is that not akin to the rallies we have? As I say, polls don't necessarily determine the vote. I mean, in Nigeria's elections, we see huge rallies. We see roads blocked, communities shut down because one party is having a rally or one candidate is coming and all of that. But at the end of the day, we see that candidate losing in that election.
Exactly.
So isn't that akin to the polling we have in the U.S.?
Well, Kamala Harris is a good example. Kamala did very well in terms of crowd, and all that, and yet it did not translate to her winning the Electoral College or even the popular vote. I think something very important has happened in this election. For the first time, we see Republican. George Bush didn't win the popular vote with Al Gore, you remember? Donald Trump did not win the popular vote with Hillary Clinton, But now we've seen Trump winning 72 million and above over Kamala Harris, 67 million and above. Electoral College, I think
270 plus.
Yeah, no, for Kamala Harris, I think it's 223. For Donald Trump, it was
294.
294. Or 294. Okay, so we see a landslide victory on the part of Donald Trump. There's no doubt about that. He ran a more structured campaign, but a campaign that has survived over years compared to someone who just started in August, which is Kamala Harris. And I'm not here to defend her. I'm just stating the obvious. All right. So the issue of poll and the way it works is a bit more scientific and can be trusted in the Western world than it is here. Here, polls can be manipulated, just like elections can be manipulated. But as we make progress, I would really like to weigh in on what happened and what we can learn as Nigerians in our electoral process as a result of what happened.
We'll get to that shortly, but I want to be able to get Mr. Shola to respond to some of the things that you said. And in addition, Mr. Shola, the fears of the rhetoric that Trump's campaign has been pushing, we've heard so many people talk about, this hateful rhetoric and what kind of fears that has put in the minds of migrants. And I'm not talking about illegal migrant, just that you're different, you're black, you're Hispanic, your sexual orientation, and what that has done to a lot of those minorities. We saw a lot of them online yesterday crying, so many of them refusing to come out of the house, because of the fears that a base that, hates them in many ways may have been empowered in ways to attack them and not very happy about what the next few years are going to bring for them as a result of this presidency. What do you make of that idea?
Okay, so before I respond directly to that question, I just want to say, in answer to what Mr. Epele said, she actually didn't have any formal press conference. I know she had interviews, but what we mean by a formal press conference is one where you sit and then you take questions from different news channels, without any restriction. She had no such interaction. She had interviews very prepared, planned, and everything. Everything was very rehearsed. And that's the point I was making. Now, in response to you, sorry, what was the question again?
I want you to be able to get your thoughts on fears that migrants may be having about this situation.
My answer to that would be that I think those fears are baseless. And I say so because we're not talking about someone who's new to power. This is someone who was president for 4 years, and he has a track record. And I don't think that anybody who, has legitimate business in America should be worried. Now, for the illegal aliens, people who are there illegitimately, I think that it's just the right thing to do. It's just the proper thing to do. Now, Trump is not against migration or immigration, as the case may be. He's against illegal immigration. And I think that that's what every right-thinking member of society, can relate to or relate with. You cannot have a country, with such open borders where people can, pour into your country in the thousands and millions over the course of days and months. And you still think that you have a country, criminals, unvetted, coming through the border. No serious nation on earth can allow that to continue. And I think that I totally and we agree with President Trump, that he has to deal with that with a very strong hand. And I think that anyone who's there legitimately has no basis to be afraid. Minorities, blacks, Hispanics, and so on, what's greater testimony to the fact that America's dark days are in the past, than the fact that they voted a black man as president, for 8 years, twice. I don't think that there can be any greater testimony to that fact. And so minorities have no basis to fear. But if you are there illegally and illegitimately, then you should have something to worry about. And I think that Trump will be right to take such actions.
Okay, let's we've looked at the elections, the build up to the elections and all of that. Can we bring it back now to Nigeria and what we can? And someone sent a message, he says, we have never learned any lessons from the US elections. The processes, the build up to it, the results when they start pouring in, and how both the victors and the vanquished, so to speak, react to the different elections. So let's start with you, Mr. Pele. The elections is done and dusted. And what's up next is the swearing in January. But what lessons can we draw from this?
I think the first and the most important lesson is we see a strong electoral system that can be trusted. I did a little research before coming on your shows, and I put them in perspective. What lesson did we learn from the U.S. strong electoral system? And then what's the pathway for Nigeria? They did have a very strong electoral system that today, that election that took place on Tuesday is the most secured, the most transparent election. The hackers were not able to hack into their system. It was a free and fair election. Yes, there is no perfect election. There are a few reports, but those reports have nothing. They can't have any reasonable impact on the outcome. And that's why Kamala Harris, like a Democrat that she is, quickly called and conceded, which is commendable. What can we learn from that? We need to build a strong electoral system. We have been going through this trajectory of reforms that we do, spend taxpayers' money, and is on shelf 14. It's never used, So a strong electoral system will always bring out a trusted outcome, like we saw on Tuesday. So I think that's one huge lesson that we need to learn. The second is what I call a robust voter education and engagement. Neil, you agree with me that we had a huge voter turnout. And the Democrats were smiling because they thought it was going to play to their own advantage. 72 million, 67 million, put it together, that's almost 38% or 39% of the entire entire population of America. I'm not talking about those who are eligible to vote. That's a huge number. What can we do to ensure that we engage use voter education to ramp up the number of those who are willing to vote? The problem with our election here has always been that of voter apathy. People are not willing to go out and vote because they don't trust the system. They don't trust the umpire. They don't trust the politicians and the political parties, you understand? They don't trust the security operatives, And once you lose trust in any system, you cannot be entrusted. It's simple. You don't need rocket science to know that. You know that most of our problem in this country today is that many people have lost confidence in the electoral process, So for me, these are some of the I can go on and on.
I want to get Shoala to talk to us a little bit about some of these reforms that we need to make in our electoral system. Talk to us a bit about some of the issues, some of the things that we can learn. In our case, we've talked about voter apathy, at least from Mr. J.K. Pele. But another reason why many people do not have faith in our electoral process right now has to do with the IREV and the explanations about the IREV and how the IREV works, the deployment of technology in our electoral system. Talk to us a bit about some of the lessons we can learn when it comes to technology use, using the US election as the example.
From my perspective, there are three lessons to learn, from the US election. The first is that elections can be conducted in a way, where both winner and loser are confident that the process was properly carried out. And that's something we should look forward to emulating, as against a system where every time one loses an election and the first thing is to rush to the courts. I'm not saying it's wrong to go to the courts. I'm only saying that if the process is transparent, if the process is credible, it will be in very rare situations that there will have to be resort to the courts. Now, another lesson I think I can draw from the US election is that there's no perfect system, there's no perfect election. If you follow the election from the onset, you will see that there were very serious concerns about credible elections, especially from the Republican side. There were concerns, especially coming from the 2020 elections, where Trump has repeatedly said that those elections were stolen. There were fears that there would be a repeat, but the system was able to, I think, prove itself to be credible in this election. But at different points, there were certain issues that arose, that, one could raise an eyebrow. But then the way the system responded, I think, is also what we should look towards emulating. And that brings me to the third point, which is the justice system. Now, you could see that throughout the process, at different points, Republicans had to go to court, Democrats had to go to court, sometimes in a 24-hour time span. And the courts were very responsive and giving judgments or rulings one way or the other within this very short period. And you could see sometimes the rulings go in favor of the Democrats, sometimes in favor of the Republicans. It wasn't a one-sided thing, where it's like maybe there's some kind of bias or anything like that. It always looked as if, the courts were looking into the merits of the matter and were taking a position based on what they thought, the merits deserve. And I think that's what we also need to emulate. I'm not condemning our judiciary. I'm only saying the process, time, how fast we dispense with cases and so on. We need to look into that. And that's a lesson to learn. Now, looking at IREV and, the whole technological apparatus in the Nigerian system, just like the conversation has been going on recently about the Edo State elections and, some of the complaints arising from there. I also talked about the issues from Bayelsa, which I think have not really been looked at, have been swept under the carpet after the Bayelsa elections. But the only way for us to move forward, really, as a nation, especially when it comes to the electoral process, is that after every election, there needs to be a sort of post-election audit to look at, what transpired in that election, where we got it right, where we got it wrong, and how we can make it better. And without doing that, then you can hardly move forward. Now, I see the cries from Edo State, and the truth is that a lot of the things that happened in Edo State, or that people claim happened in Edo State, because we do not know now what the reality is, happened in Bayelsa. And in the case of Bielsa, it has been looked at by the courts. It has been adjudicated by the courts, and a lot of those things have been established as fact. The fact that you have result sheets from the same polling units, with the same serial number, but having different results. The fact that the Beavers report is showing you have 40-something people accredited, and yet result sheets are showing 1,000 people voted. These are things that were adjudicated and have been established as fact. And so we need to have that conversation and to say, how did this happen? How could this have passed under the radar? And how can we make it better so that elections get progressively better rather than getting progressively worse?
The things that have been adjudicated and decided upon as facts, it appears that we even continuously or consistently seem to be adjudicating on about the same thing. Result sheets from polling units bearing same numbers, or having those accredited being below the number of those that are voting that actually came out to vote. So this appeared to be the same things we're looking at consistently. And while we're looking at how to reform, you talked about reform sitting on shelf 14, not on shelf 2 or 3, so it takes a long time to even get to them. The other thing is, we'll get back to this, but this matter of post-election audit. We in television and production, we call it post-mortem. Where we'll sit down and look at, okay, where did we make a mistake? How can we make a difference? And you see that we try to improve on this. Even this program we're on today, there's a post-mortem that's going to happen at 11. But why do you think it's as if nobody wants to do that audit? Nobody wants to.
It's usually done. It's usually done.
By who?
By us, because I'm involved in the election.
Okay, but then at the end of the day, we still have the same errors every other election.
I talked about shelf 14. It's like doing a policy and you put it there and it's gathering dust and you don't want to use it. But we do submit our reports to INEC. INEC has an entire system, and I must be, because I know how it works. Where they sit down to do a thorough post-mortem. They even have consultants. They have civil society being part of that process. They do. But the point is that it's one thing to do, is another thing to use what you have done. So
they use as
they use, yes. They use, and sometimes some of the recommendation goes against them or against the government that is paying them. And so it's never done.
Can I ask?
They don't do it.
The last post-mortem that was done by civil society, we attend these things when they happen. The recommendations that were given, let's say during the presidential election in 2023, the recommendations that were given by TAF,
by Yaga,
Clark, Code, is there any of those recommendations? Are there any of those recommendations that you have seen implemented in the off-cycle elections? Let's say Edo, Ondo, and the other off-cycle elections. Have there been any that have been implemented?
Trickles of it. Especially, yes, inclusivity.
Okay.
Trickles of it has been implemented, but
inclusivity for people with disabilities.
Yes, not holistically. But there are 2 points I'd like to make, and it's more or less for me like a call. Okay, lesson that we can draw from the U.S. election: decentralization of election management. Decentralization of election management. I think I'm one of those who have been advocating for the unbundling of INEC. It's just too big an elephant that is not able to really take care of things, and it's not an accusation of anybody in INEC. It's more or less how we structured INEC, the current INEC. And then we also are advocating for more responsibilities to be given to them by conducting local government election. It's not going to work. So there's a need to decentralize election management. We can try regional management as well and all that. And then local government. If you look at this election, there was a total deployment of the election management system to counties, and so they were able to track the happenings. And of course, even them was afraid that they were not going to give results. Result came in less than 48 hours or 24 hours, So the other thing I want to also talk about is finance management, electoral, political campaign finance management. You notice for the first time in the history, Kamala Harris did over $1 billion US. The person next to him is Obama. Obama did 750 million US dollars. Kamala Harris exceeded that. But you see, there is transparency in the system. She can't jump out and take that money and buy chocolate or hire a private jet and go on a holiday. She will go to jail. So there's a need for us to learn the level of transparency, integrity, and accountability in the electoral campaign funding, and how they dispense. But I'm also heavy on this decentralization. We need to ensure that those within the rural areas will make decisions on how we manage our elections and contribute to it, and the local government system needs to be brought in election management system, so that in the whole election management process, so that we can get credible, verifiable outcomes.
Okay, so we're almost out of time, so I'll have the two of you weigh in on this particular thing about, there are some things you mentioned earlier when we started out. Suala and Mr. Pele, you weigh in on this one. Issues that should be seen playing out during the campaigns. Gender parity. Yep. Race issues. As for us here, is about ethnicity / religious affiliations. Nationalism. And then the core values. So someone will say, what are Nigeria's core values? The issue of nationalism during campaigns. And are we really united as a people, ethnic-wise, religious-wise? And then gender issues. What lessons can we pull from this as we go forward?
I think it's all wrapped up in one thing, and my brother out there will have his views. Patriotism. How patriotic are we? Now, something happened. I picked up information from Libya, and I was in one or two other national television talking about what was going on in Libya, and the Libyan minister came up and said, oh, look, they are trying to handle the issue, and that the $50,000 that was fined them had been waived. And then our own ministry are there saying that there's nothing like that happening. I mean, patriotism, it's key. If we must solve the issue of gender, if I'm patriotic, and believe you me, I would want to see Kayla, my friend, become the president of Nigeria and give her all the support. Maybe I'm speaking prophetically this point here. Give her all the support. Somebody. You understand? The issue of nationalism is this country first policy. And believe you me, any leader that wants to push that narrative like Donald Trump is pushing and said, oh, I'm all about my country, you will turn around and become a very selfish individual. It's not all about your country. There are other countries that will depend on your country, and my brother talked about immigration no, he's a lawyer. You must understand that even when I am illegal in a country, which is something that I don't subscribe to, I can say it on a national television. I love this country to a point that I turned down the American green card. Given the opportunity today, I will do the same thing, So I don't subscribe to anybody going to anything illegal. I don't subscribe it at all. I will not be part of it. However, even when you're illegal in a legal entity, there is a human right that covers you until that entity proves that you are illegal. And then they can do whatever they like.
All right, let's get Swala to weigh in on this. Swala, these are your moments, your closing moments. Please weigh in on that matter so that we can...
Well, on the issue you raised, I would say this. I think what we need to fix is the electoral system. Once we have a credible system, everything follows. It's like where the Bible says, seek ye first the kingdom, and every other thing is added. So gender issues, patriotism, every other issue is solved by having a credible electoral process. Let me bring it home a bit. For example, even in Lagos State, in the last elections, on the last national presidential elections, you see how Lagos State voted. Even with indigenship on the cards or ethnicity on the cards and all that. So when we fix the system, I trust Nigerians. If it's a woman president, I think Nigerians are ready to vote in a female president if she fits the bill. But let's have a system that works and that can guarantee that the votes of the people count. Without that, we don't have anything. We shouldn't even be talking about any other thing without a credible electoral process. And that's basically why I'm here. A credible electoral process. Yeah. There's something scandalous that happened, which I've tried to draw attention to, from the Bayelsa elections and then to the Edo elections, yes. Which is the fact that INEC came up with this system, very commendable, credible system, where the Beavers machine, apart from just transmitting the result sheets to IREV, is also transmitting the accreditation figure from each polling unit to IREV, so that in a snapshot.
We are running out of time.
Yes.
So I know that this is a conversation that has to continue at some point. We need to get you back and have a long conversation with you, but we do have to close you there. But I want to thank you very much for joining us on the program. Shola Jumbo, legal practitioner, a former MBA Yanagua vice chairman, and an expert on electoral litigation. Thank you very much for being with us on the program. And Uncle Jake, Mr. Jake, Chief Doctor.
Go and contest for. We prophesied it. Even Suala agree with me. We'll vote for you.
Amen. Mr. Jake Pele, founder of TAF. Thank you. Africa. TAF Africa. Thank you very much for being with us on the program.
Thank you.
We do have to go on to business. Business Morning will be up next, and we'll be back at 10:30, where we'll be having a State of the Nation conversation on a lot of issues. So please stay with us. So I guess it's Kayla for president, but I don't know which year Kayla will be running for president. But Kayla, don't worry, we'll vote for you. We'll have a female president in Nigeria. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. So obviously, the United States election, the aftermath of it is still very big in the news and conversations all around, even affecting oil prices. So we see this morning that oil prices rose following that sell-off triggered by the United States presidential election as risks to oil supply from a Trump presidency and a hurricane building in the Gulf Coast outweighed a stronger U.S. dollar. We had a stronger U.S. dollar since the day before and yesterday, and also higher inventory. So we see what has happened to just almost 1% gain is what we see for Brent at $75.57 a barrel, 0.87% up. WTI 0.75% up, $72.23. And then when we look closely, we see normally for over a month now, we're having about $4 difference between Brent and WTI, but that seems to have dropped just a little bit, a tad. That's what we see there. But anyways, market mover is still incoming President Donald Trump is expected to reimpose his maximum pressure policy of sanctions on Iranian oil, and that could cut supply by as much as 1 million barrels a day. This is what the estimation and forecast is among the energy industry globally. Also, another factor now threatening oil supply in North America, Hurricane Raphael intensifies into a Category 3 hurricane. That happened on Wednesday, and about 17% of crude oil production, that's about 304,000 barrels a day in the U.S. Gulf of Mexico, had been shut in response to that. This information is from the U.S. Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement. So another threat to oil supply there. The upside to oil market may, however, be limited to short and medium term, as OPEC is expected to increase supply capacity in January, while historical trends do not suggest that sanctions from Trump presidency on India and China would really affect supply. Come back home to the Naira now, looking at the trade
of the currency, Nigeria's currency at the close of trade yesterday. A further drop on NFM, 0.62% drop for NFM yesterday, and that amounts to about 10 naira. 10 naira 33 kobo was shaved off NFM, so it opened at 1,671 naira 32 kobo, but closed at 1,681 naira 65 kobo. NAFEX is on the flip side becoming a norm these days. Opened at 1,682 naira 5 kobo, but closed at 1,671 naira 80 kobo at the close of trade. We haven't heard of intervention from the central bank in the last couple of days. I think we haven't had any this week. Perhaps they're watching out on what suggestion the World Bank did, which is that there should be certainty on when we'll have central bank intervention or not, so investors and demand can follow the trend, so perhaps that's what they're working on. Now, the Federal Inland Revenue Service is assuring Nigerians that there's nothing in the 4 tax bills currently before the National Assembly which threatens the existence of any government agency or the jobs of individuals. The chairman of the service, Mr. Zaka Dedeji, who was speaking with chief executive officers of the National Agency for Science and Engineering Infrastructure and also the National Information Technology Development Agency, as well as the Tertiary Education Trust Fund at the Revenue House in Abuja, explains that the bills are provisions that will help in laying a solid foundation for sustainability and give various agencies the opportunity to focus on their respective functions rather than bothering about revenue collection. And still talking back here in Nigeria, we do see that the federal government says that it is set to sensitize small and medium-scale enterprises as well as nano businesses in Ogun State towards the stimulating economic growth, development, and poverty reduction. Achieving this through a town hall sensitization in Abuja, the state capital. They gave information that will empower and mobilize micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as manufacturing enterprises in the states.
The interest rate, first of all, is 9%. There are no fees attached to it, no processing fee, no appraisal commitment. There are no fees attached to it. And you also have up to 3 years to repay the loan. And you have the first 3 months, you don't pay interest or principal, and after the first 3 months, no interest or principal, you start paying interest from the 4th month up to the 6th month. It's after the 6th month that you start paying both the interest and the principal. So that's a way of making it easier for businesses to start off, to be able to get into production before they get into the pressure of having to start repaying the loan, because we know how difficult and expensive it is to acquire raw materials and run the business. And this opportunity is available to both new and existing businesses. So it's not a case of, you must have run your business for 3-4 years or before you can access it. Even startup businesses can also benefit from the loan. Of course, existing businesses, if you're an existing business, we would like to see that, okay, you have a sales record, that you can show us to demonstrate that you've been in operations and all that. But even for startup businesses, we'll look at the potential of the business and, you'll be qualified based on that.
Now, the Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC, has held its 2024 annual workshop for judges on legal and regulatory issues in the communications industry, and it was organized in Lagos. This year's theme was the role of the judiciary in accelerating digital transformation in Nigeria. Yes, according to the Executive Vice Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of the Commission, Dr. Aminu Maida, is urgent given the urgency of scaling up digital transformation across Nigeria, as well as the importance placed by the government on improving coordination and synergy among key stakeholders to achieve more beneficial outcomes on its policies. Dr. Maida believes that the judiciary has a crucial role to play in achieving this.
Increasingly over the years, telecommunication infrastructure has suffered from disruptions due to extensive damage from vandalism and theft, fiber cuts by construction companies, to mention a few, and unfortunately even restricted access that prevents operators from servicing critical infrastructure. The industry has long called for special protection to be accorded to these critical assets to ensure continuous connectivity and reliable communication services. Ensuring and regulating Nigeria's digital transformation is not a task that the NCC alone can fulfill. It involves strategic collaboration with key partners, and the judiciary remains one of our most important stakeholders in this regard. A functional digital economy is built on investor and consumer confidence, which are impossible in the absence of the rule of law, a critical element that is supplied by the judiciary.
Now back to the big story of the day. We're still in that euphoria of a Donald Trump presidency in the United States and the impact on emerging economies. Let's have this discussion now with the Chief Executive Officer Managing Director of SI Capital, Mr. Olugbenga Ogunipe, joins us here in the studio. Mr. Ogunipe, good morning. Good to see you in Nigeria. I know we met at Washington during the IMF World Bank meeting. Did you see a bit of the election? You know, of course, election started there. It's not like ours.
Yeah.
Were you able to go around to get views about the election, you know, before you left the US?
Good morning, and thank you for inviting me. Like you said, we met in the US and it covered the IMF program and the World Bank program. And then the following week is the US election. You can see the euphoria. Everybody was talking about it, what's going to happen. And then the results of the election has come and gone. And then it was a bit of a shock to many people to see that.
Was it a shock to you? Did you see Trump coming in?
Personally, it wasn't a shock to me. I mean, for someone that has been following the election, the polling and everything, even while I was in the US, I had interaction with a few people, and what they said, you see that, oh, this man is coming back truly, because what the US citizens are saying is that while he was there in his first time, they were able to afford a lot of things. They were able to go to the grocery and buy things. Inflation was down. So they are really looking for him to come back and do that magic again. So, I mean, it wasn't a shock to me.
Well, anyway, a lot of people, even here, said that issues around inflationary pressures globally, which started with, apart from COVID, then we had the Russian invasion into Ukraine. That's a major one. Now you have the Middle East. He has promised that, I mean, perhaps he has a magic wand, and all of that will reduce. And we know that once those are being calmed, then most likely inflationary pressure globally would reduce. But I mean, how does that affect us back here home in Africa, emerging economies?
So, like you said, during Trump era, inflation was low, but as soon as COVID came, pandemic disrupted all economics throughout the world, and then government started spending, and inflation started coming. I mean, to an average people over there, they didn't want to understand that. All they know is that this man done some magic, so he should come back and do it. So we also see that for emerging economies like Nigeria, inflation was so high even after the pandemic, and it's coming down a bit now, it's subsiding, and then we expect that it will continue to, because I mean the economies all over the world now are experiencing a low inflation compared to pandemic period and even before the pandemic. So it's going to subside. It's going to start coming down. It's going to prices will continue to come down. That's what we expect to see in the coming months. And then if government can accelerate those programs that they have put in place, and I think African economies will experience a low inflation. It's an economic cycle.
It's not magic that you have Trump there does not automatically mean that, you know, African economies would begin to feel less pressure. I mean, for instance, we can expect a surging dollar, you know, and a gaining dollar means higher debt servicing for us, affects demand on oil because oil becomes more expensive and all of that. So I wonder what you see that Trump can do, you know, to help us.
The irony of it really is that Trump is America first. All his rhetoric has always been America first. So you wonder what is in it for us as a country, Nigeria, Africa as a whole. So it's kind of a bit dicey to see if Trump is going to help anybody outside America. So really, Nigeria and Africans as a whole, we need to now sit down and look at what can we do really on our own without having to depend on him. Because, but if you look at some of the programs that has been on ground, like the AGOA, the Africa Growth Opportunities Act, and then the pledge by the US to spend about $55 billion in the next 3 years in Africa, you see all those supposed to help us actually in sending our goods over there and lowering our tariff. But Trump has come to say, no, he's going to even impose tariff on some of these things coming from China, maybe Africa as well. So, I mean, it's a long journey for most of African countries going into Trump presidency. It's a bit unclear what is going to happen. Again, you mentioned from yesterday's result, dollar has started gaining strength. So it means investors will really even be looking at investing in the US economy, because a stronger dollar means it's stronger, your wealth is strong and everything. So it's going to be like an influx of investment into that economy. So we see less investment happening in Africa. We see Nigeria looking for FDI during the October 1 celebration. The president mentioned FDI increased. We hope that trajectory will also increase. It will help our reserve, help our foreign exchange. But this is a new president coming in saying no, he wants everything to be America first. So it's quite dicey, going forward, looking at it.
Is there any policy, any hedge African countries, Nigeria, can be taking at this time? It comes in, I think, in January. Is there anything we should look forward to doing, that could be as a hedge for the economy?
So I think what we can do is now to begin to deepen our relationship with the US, especially the lawmakers and the diplomats in the US and the rest. But it's also funny, ironically, the Congress, both the Senate and the House, seems to be going to the Republicans. So it means Trump is going to have a free road, free way for anything that he wants to implement. So we really need to deepen that relationship. We need to convince and let them know that to invest in Africa is even better, it makes them more prosper. African economy is largely undeveloped, so there is a lot of opportunities. So it's for any discerning investors, it can always see that the opportunities abound in Africa. So if they can get that message, they will come. But hey, we are talking about this man that wants to develop America first before any other thing. So it's, like I said, it's a tricky one. It's quite on, shall I say, unknown territory for most African leaders
I guess it's also on the African countries to also look inwards and also, take care of their own, use your resources to develop your own.
Exactly.
After all, China did it.
Yes, exactly.
And now they can, almost stand shoulder to shoulder with the United States because they have developed.
The message that we should be preaching now is for Africa to sit up and develop their countries. We cannot depend no more on these countries to help us to develop our countries.
Well, I think Ukraine is the biggest victim in all of this. But anyways, thank you so much for your time. Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director of FSI Capital Investment Limited, Mr. Olubenga Ogundipe.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
All right, moving on to other issues now. We're moving to our commodities space. And guess what? Since yesterday, I've been hearing some news in the background. Haven't gotten confirmation yet. Vito Group, Transfigura Group, and BPPLC, they're interested in some assets in Nigeria, talking about the oil and gas part. But thank God we do have Mr. Bismarck Rwani, Chief Executive Officer of Financial Derivatives Company. He has his way with information and is going to tell us more about this. Mr. Rwani, good morning, and thank you so much for joining the program this morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
So what are these companies doing in Nigeria? What's the latest with them?
Well, Trafigura, Bitol, and Glencore have been partners with Nigeria for a long time. Basically, they are massive oil traders globally. Bitol, for example, is the biggest oil trading company in the world. Now, what have they been doing in Nigeria in the past? What they've been doing is that they've been involved in the swap for crude for refined product swap on behalf of the Nigerian government. So Nigeria exports about 400,000 to 500,000 barrels of oil, and in return receives the equivalent in refined products, i.e. diesel, petrol, kerosene, aviation fuel, and lubricants. That was the deal. Now, we understand that Vitol and Trafigura are interested in selling refined products of Nigeria across the coast of West Africa, in particular diesel for that matter. That's an interesting element because Nigeria, instead of exporting crude to Europe and then the European refiners exporting the refined products to Ghana, Trafigura is actually taking refined products from the Dangote refinery, ocean evacuated, and taking it into Tema, the port of Tema, the port of Freetown, and also the port of Monrovia. That is what is happening. So in terms of value for Nigeria, Nigeria is getting more value rather than exporting crude, now exporting refined products.
But Mr. Wani, I did hear, perhaps it's not correct that they seem to want to be like a competition to Dangote, so we don't have monopoly, that they are also looking to enter the space of refining even in Nigeria.
No, I'm not sure about that. The refining capacity in Nigeria is already quite huge. You have 50,000 barrel, one single train refinery. You have Port Harcourt, you have Warri, you have Kaduna, and you have the, the modular refineries. So I think the situation is that these companies are interested maybe in buying the existing refineries. That may be one thing. The other thing is that they are globally they're traders. And so the fact that they own assets will not be exactly a strategic fit for their business. But you never know. As far as we know, and as far as we have heard, it is the first port of call is buying refined products from Dangote refinery, and the second point of order is to sell them across the coast of West Africa.
So do we have a timeline when they want to start this, and what impacts can we expect that to have on the price of diesel in the domestic front? Because, also exporting may become competition.
The time between when discussions are had and the final investment decision in the petroleum sector is quite long. There's a long lag time. So I would say if they are going to be purchasing assets on the ground here, it will take at least 1 to 2 years. But if they are purchasing products, then that will be very short. That's a matter of weeks. So whichever way, Nigeria benefits. If it's for products, Nigeria benefits short term. If it's for assets, Nigeria benefits both short term and long term.
All right, and then we see the price of diesel is now 1,150 for a liter. It's the same, yes. Almost the same with petrol, yeah. If not cheaper.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the price of diesel actually dropped below that. It was about 1,020 naira before it went up. But because of the collapse of the grid, there's been massive demand by generator owners for diesel, and that has pushed up the price a little bit. But it is expensive. At the current price, if you buy 1,000 tons, 1,000 liters, you're spending more than 1 million naira, almost 1,100,000 naira. And that is expensive. What has happened, therefore, there's been a gradual but consistent shift from generator use to solar panels. The solar panels, you have to store the energy in batteries. So you have those long life batteries, which people are using. But anyway, the energy mix within the Nigerian corporate space, both in the manufacturing area and even in the offices, has moved more in favor of solar and wind, in other words, renewable energy. We've also seen some people using gas-fired turbines for their manufacturing process.
Mr. Rani, what's going on with the Naira? I haven't heard of any intervention from the CBN, at least this week. But I do know that the World Bank had shared a suggestion to say to be better. And I know you have also expressed this a couple of times.
What we do know...
Yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Rwani.
Okay, what we do know, I didn't quite hear that message, but let me have the question. What we do know is that the Naira is strengthening. The dollar is also strengthening. So normally, if the dollar strengthens, the Naira weakens against it. But because of certain fundamentals that playing in favor of the Naira, we are beginning to see the Naira appreciate somewhat. It has appreciated by over almost 100 Naira in the last week or two. And once December is approaching, the visiting friends and relatives, the cocoa harvest, main crop, and now with the higher oil production, we are beginning to see some gradual but very slow spending on Naira. Our focus and our projections is that the Naira will begin to strengthen now, but will strengthen further towards the end of December and into January. So we are quite bullish about the value of the Naira. We do not think the Naira is now selling at about 1730. We do not think that's fair value, that's the misaligned value. And we think that Naira begins to strengthen. One, because interest rates are high in Nigeria. Two, because Nigeria is beginning to, the supply from the central bank is increasing. And we believe that once the central bank comes up with a program, which I believe they will do so very soon, then it becomes clear that if you don't get the dollar today, you'll get it tomorrow. If you don't get it tomorrow, you'll get it next week. If you don't get it next week, you'll get it the following week. That way, the stampede of people buying dollars because they fear it will not be in existence will reduce. Once that reduces, then that premium that comes into the pricing of the dollar because of anticipated shortages will disappear. And that could bring the Naira down towards the range of 16 or 1500, 1550 for a dollar. Is that good value? For now, I can say it's fair value, but it could be better. Everything depends on the availability of dollars and the efficient management of the foreign currency by the central bank.
Yeah, but Mr. Aaron, it does seem like that projection of the Naira at 1,200 this year is gone.
No, I think so. For now, let's forget about 1,200 because that's a pie in the sky at this point in time. But next year, sometime, maybe we'll begin to look at that. But so many things will have to happen. For now, we can forget 1,200 Naira to the dollar, at least in the short term.
All right, Mr. Bismarck Rwani, Chief Executive Officer of Financial Derivatives Company, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Just a little bit of how the market fared yesterday. We did see another drop in the market. It was down 0.57%, is that it? Yeah, but I mean, we're still below the 97,000 at the close of trade yesterday, 337 billion Naira shaved off and still around 58 trillion Naira at the close of trade. Activity chart was quite red. The volume was down more than 88%. Value down. Deals also reduced at the close of trade yesterday. Banking almost 1% in the red. Consumer goods down. Industrial goods had a slight positive there, and insurance and oil and gas. Still a lot of activity going on. And I told you about Unicell coming out of nowhere, making top trades, continues to keep that pace at this time. That's Unicell. And it did that yesterday. So that's why we see that positive movement in oil and gas. But I think, people are beginning to give attention to it. I saw some write-up and all of that at the close of trade. Now, we haven't done the fixed income markets in a bit on Business Money. Let's see how that did yesterday. So for the federal government bonds yesterday, 5 deals worth 10.9 billion Naira. And the most traded was February 2034 and June 2038. Long term, we'll see there. But of course, for the treasury bills, it's always the short term. That's where the foreign investors normally, that's the treasury bill for the Nigerian treasury bills. We had also 5 deals yesterday worth 6.03 billion. And the February 2025 security was the most favored, as well as September 2025. For OMO, the auction from the central bank, they had more transactions yesterday, the deals, 146 worth 558.88 billion naira. And we see the November 2025 security had 141 deals on it. A lot of transaction that would be mostly in the secondary market, I guess. Well, at 1 p.m., Ladi Williams will be here with Will Ibong, so you get fresh market numbers and update intraday transactions in the market, as well as 55 minutes, or as parts of 55 minutes of business conversations. That's waiting for your 1 p.m. during Business Incorporated. I'm Minnie John McCoy. I head you back to Nelta and Kayla, who wants to be the next president, the first female president in Nigeria.
Welcome back from the Business Morning studios to where Kayla, who wants to be the first female president of Nigeria, according to Prophet Jacob Bello, right?
People are playing with this thing. You know, this prophecy,
you never know.
You never know.
Exactly.
Even though I have no interest in politics whatsoever, you never say never. You never know.
You don't need to have interest. Just be willing to serve your people.
That's why I will serve from the house.
You serve from
and here.
All right. Well, somebody else is in the studio who's serving, and he has served. He's still serving. Wants to continue serving, and we'll start the conversation today from the point of view of those who are just stepping in to serve. They had served before, and they have come back to serve. That's President Donald Trump. So in the studio today, we have Laulu Akonde, former presidential aide, joins us to discuss State of the Nation, starting out from the impact of Donald Trump presidency on Nigeria going forward. How are you doing? Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
You look good, Laulu. Let's start this conversation with this, your suit. Let's talk about how we go. But the President Trump, who will be sworn in January, some of it, I mean, you know, he has a clothing line, right?
Oh, yeah.
His ties are some of the best you can think of around that.
Yeah, I used to wear them.
I'll get paid for this advertising, right? But, okay, he used to wear them. Did you hear that?
I heard
he used to wear them.
Well, interestingly, Laulu was SA to the vice president at the time when Trump was president.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so from that point of view now, he's come back in. We've seen the build up to the elections.
Yeah.
And in our first segment, we talked about some of the lessons we could draw from the build-up to the election itself and the result. And one of the things that one of our guests mentioned decentralization of the election management system, decentralizing it. And the other thing they mentioned was keeping Nigeria, the nation first, nationalism and patriotism, keeping that first, all tied into the electoral process. But let's hear your point of view from all of this.
Well, in terms of the election itself, I think that what has happened in the United States is that you've seen the prevalence of race, more than any other thing. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that, it has gotten to a point that the majority of Americans who happen to be white, over 60% of the voting population is actually white. They are not comfortable with what seems to be the changes, the demographic changes that are happening in their country, and some of which is been proposed or predicted to even get deeper. So this election for them, in my view, is to say that, look, we don't want things happening in this way. We want to keep the country to be essentially ours. Now, all you need to do is just look at the data, and you will see very clearly that majority of the white people came out and voted for Donald Trump, regardless of many of the controversies that have surrounded him, whether it is the fact that he seemed to have supported an insurrection, he seems to have been I mean, he was actually convicted of criminal charges and several other things. It was more important to them, the message of how to keep America owned by the people who believe they own America. And, I don't think
how are they going to enforce that?
Thing.
Because someone said, not one person, a lot of people, because this conversation about race has been going on for quite a while.
Yeah.
And there are many people, and I'm not ashamed to say this, myself included, who believe that in the next 20 years, the United States will be a brown country. A lot of mixed people. It's going to be a brown country in 20 years with the way the world is going and the inclusivity. And, you know, one of the things that we've been talking about are the lessons that we can learn from that electoral process. One of them that stood out for me, and I want you to be able to talk about that, is the nationalism bit of it in everything. Even listening to Kamala Harris yesterday, giving her concession speech, and I remember her listening to her say, look, even though I've conceded this election, I would not concede the fight that fueled this campaign.
Right.
You know, and looking at them, everything is geared towards our country, our country, our country. How do we replicate that in Nigeria? Because what happens here is when we lose, we castigate the system. As opposed to we throw the whole baby and the bathwater. It's a bad system. The judiciary is bad. INEC is bad. Our country is bad. How do we change that way of thinking?
Okay, very, very, very good question. And it's important to note here that the brand of politics that Mr. Donald Trump represents should bring us a bit of consolation in Nigeria and Africa. That is not really about the goodwill or the lack of it of the politician or the political elite. It's not about that. I mean, Donald Trump, we all know who he was. It is about the building of strong institutions that can withstand the excesses of the political elite. Okay? Which is what America has, which is the reason why in 4 years, America will move another way. So whatever Donald Trump has done in the last in the first time that he came out, that he's going to do, you know, is not going to essentially have enough time to alter the strength and the character of the American people. America is still going to be, for me, I mean, I'm biased about it, it's still going to be the America the beautiful, but it's going to be a precarious time this 4 years. But you are going to see the resistance of the strong institution. So in Nigeria, what we need to do is to build our institutions. It's not to really worry ourselves about the political elite so much. It's to build a system that will resist even the worst political elite.
So the question is, do we have a people who are willing to build the system?
That's horse.
Will they be given room to be involved in the building of those systems?
I think that is what we are going to go inexorably. That's what is going to happen. Because what haven't we tried, especially since 1999? We've had all the stuff that we can have. People thought, oh, okay, this is PDP, and now this is APC. We haven't seen a lot of difference. There are no ideological differences really, between both of them or among the parties generally. So it is getting to the point that the people, our communities, leaders outside of the political realm have to gather together to say that, look, this is not a problem that will be solved in Abuja. This is not a problem that will be solved in the state capital. This is a problem that will be solved among us as a people. I think what we need is a rebirth that emphasizes our moral rectitude and that seeks to build stronger institutions. And it must start with the people. It must start with the people. Politicians are not going to do anything to change this situation.
I want to come back to Nigeria because we have quite a number of issues here.
Yes,
but before then, at the time when you were SA, to SA Media, to vice president.
When we worked together, Akela.
Yes, when me and you worked together.
You rope tying.
I always like to make like we're him. So he's trying to know we were there together. Okay, so at the time when you were SA Media to former Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo, I remember that Donald Trump was in office at the time. In terms of the benefits that era had for the Nigerian people, could you talk to us a little bit about some of those benefits and what we should expect in this 4 years that he's coming in?
Very, very good question. So the world will be a little bit confused that the person the Americans have chosen as their president don't represent the values that America as champion in the world. Okay? And that's a real border. No doubt about that. Within America and outside. Because we are saying, so what kind of signal are you sending? This guy has been convicted, yet he ran and he has won. Okay. But on the side of Nigeria, it was under the President Donald Trump that Nigeria was able eventually to purchase those fighter jets. The previous administration, which was actually democratic, threw all kinds of bombs and obstacles in the way of Nigeria getting those fighter jets. They say, oh, human rights this, human rights that. Mm-hmm. I will not say that those are not legitimate issues, but they couldn't resolve that while Obama was there. When President Trump got there, guess what? We got the approval to purchase those jets. So if you look at it that way, hey, you know, there are even in the worst circumstances at times you can bring out some good value. Mm. So I think, and I think the president that started, President Tinubu started very well, said, look, hey, this guy has won. This is the guy the Americans have picked. We're going to work with him. We're going to say, okay, what can we do together? This is our interest. I mean, those are your interests. You know, where do we find a mutual connection? And I'm sure that, you know, if we play our cards very well, we can, you know, get the better part of whatever it is that we want from a relationship with America.
Back to Nigeria. Let's talk national issues now. You talked about the fighter jets, which made me think about the defense, our defense capabilities and our military. And the death of Lieutenant General Taoreed Lagbaja came to my mind just there. You know, talk to us a bit about, you know, about what sort of person he was and how the military should be handling this loss at this time as a people. And of course, talking about the new man who's in that office right now.
Yeah, well, it's quite sad the passing of General Lagbaja at 56. You know, quite very young, and I think it brought a new vibe, you know, to the army and generally the military with his enthusiasm and, you know, quite a bit of hands-on approach. You know, we still remember that video of him doing. You know, the exercise with his people. So sad that we lost somebody that is very known to be very courageous and very patriotic. But I think, you know, the military is set up in such a way that they can quickly recover from this kind of, you know, sad situation. You know, and I think the president has appointed somebody in acting capacity who actually belongs to the same cause. I think cost 39 of the NDA who has stepped up. So hopefully, you know, as an institution and as a nation, we can move on. You know, but we also have to spare a thought for the family, the wife and the children. You know, who would be the ones that actually feel this loss the more. Our condolences and our prayers are with them.
I mean, what's interesting is that he's coming in at a time when we are now looking at banditry again. We saw the headline today of the bandit attack in Zamfara.
All the way to Niger.
All the way to Niger, which means that he has to hit the ground running. What should he be thinking about right now?
Well, I think, you know, what he should be doing is to find means of keeping the momentum, you know, that is already in place, just ensure that it does not, you know, it doesn't drop. I think if you can keep that momentum and then, you know, let's get to use more technology, you know, in the fight, you know, because the technology is already there to how to identify where these people are, you know, to localize their place and then, you know, use air power to
you know, one of the state governors was quoted as saying Nigeria's military can actually end these banditry in 24 hours if they are allowed to go ahead. That's the governor of Bauchi State. Oh, okay. That they can end it in 24 hours.
I thought Zamfara governor
also said that. If they are allowed and equipped to go ahead and do this. But in the face of that, we had, while the banditry issues and insecurity challenges are, we had that matter of the End Bad Governance protest, and then there was the arraignment of some suspects, that minors, and a mix of all of that, human rights abuses here and there. Talk a bit about that, the human rights abuses in the face of dealing with insecurity issues. Then we'll come back to the disparity between those that were seen in court and those that were being handed over in some states. How do you merge the two faces? So let's start from the human rights abuse. Of course, it's condemnable, the level of human rights abuses.
It's completely, you know, I mean, what really strikes me is how it is possible to have, you know, fellow Nigerians. And I'm not now worried about the fact whether they are in uniform or whether they are law enforcement agencies. I'm not really worried so much about that. But that they are also Nigerians. You know, they are possibly parents themselves, you know, possibly have their own children or have relatives who are young people. How they thought in some of the agencies, you know, how they thought that it is okay, first of all, to arrest that large number of minors, okay? So if they are breaking the laws and you pick them where they are breaking the laws, okay, that makes sense. But then to now take them in detention for about 3 months, okay, which breaks the law. And now from what I'm reading, some of them are even saying that there were times that they were not well fed. Now, but to make matters worse, how people felt that it would be okay to bring them in open court in that even very shoddy, sloppy, not to even talk about the fact that their rights are being violated. And we thought that that is okay. That mentality of those people, and I say, regardless of whether they are in uniform or not, they are first and foremost Nigerians. The fact that they even thought that itself is okay. Did you see that lawyer who was even saying that, oh yes, these guys, you know, some of them just came to visit their relatives. They're not the ones that, you know, it's just, that is what beats my imagination, that what has happened to us as a people, you know, for our fellow community people, you know, countrymen, citizens, to think that you can treat young people in such a very despicable manner.
Do they not know, maybe?
Yeah, that's the point.
Maybe they don't know, and that is the problem, isn't it? If you don't know. So, because even looking at it, I'm sure, this is a story that me and Nelson know. At the time when we saw those videos for the first time, you remember someone who's our boss actually asked, how did you get these videos? And you know, most people didn't understand why he was asking that question. There's a reason why. You're not supposed to have a video of minors. So in his mind, it was shocking. Like, how could you? When did the video
in a regular court?
In a regular court. How did this even happen? You know, so it's possible that there's a lot of education about how to handle this situation that maybe our security agencies or our judicial officers don't know. Is that what the case is, or is this just shoddy behavior?
I mean, it's going to be useful to retrain and give people create more awareness and all of that. But I mean, would they treat their own children that way? Would they think that it is all right, you know, to treat their own children or their own relatives that way? That's the way I'm looking at it. That there's something that has happened to our moral rectitude. There's something that has happened to us as a people, a community of people, you know, which to me seems to be a deeper problem, you know, that we need to begin to seriously speak to, at the very least. You know, because I'm sure, I mean, look at what is happening now. Now that the president has shown his displeasure, so everybody's now saying, no, of course, we're going to investigate. Oh, yes, you know, what did they do? Where were all these people when this was going on?
It is indicative of the way we do governance in Nigeria, isn't it? We put strong men in power and everyone is waiting. We do what we watch his body language. If he seems like he doesn't like Nelta, we all start to behave like we don't like Nelta. Then the moment Nelta's rights have been Nelta to punch me. And then the international community says, how could this happen to Nelta? And then he now goes, who did this to Nelta? We all say, oh, terrible. How could that have happened to Nelta? We are all going to do something about it. This method of governance, is that the way it's supposed to be? We just follow body language and do this and try that?
So it's as if we're placing body language against the laws.
Against the laws, against the right thing to do.
Exactly. And that is why I thought, I mean, of course, we're still going to hold the political leaders responsible because that's why they have the stick, okay, to enforce proper behavior, order, and decency. But we must also question, ourselves as a people, why we think that is right. Because like you said, we know the laws. The law says that 48 hours maximum.
Sorry, loud. Do we know the law?
Well, we do.
No. I ask again.
Yes.
Do we know the laws? Because many Nigerians don't even know the laws that apply to them in terms of like their right and benefit. They don't know. They don't know what the law says as regards certain areas of their lives. Whichever way you want to look at it, many Nigerians don't know. And as they will say, this is the job of the government to educate. But education is hardly happening.
And so, I mean, to the extent that, so for example, if I'm a law enforcement official, I should know, as a reason of my job, I should educate myself about what the Constitution says about my work. For instance, that you cannot hold somebody beyond 48 hours. So the fact that people don't know speaks to a certain level of mediocrity, if not outright inefficiency, that we have perpetrated over the years.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate for a little bit.
Okay.
Please don't attack me, Nigerians. The video that we just saw recently, where the boys were handed over to state governments, the last one I saw before I came into the studio,
right.
They were giving each of them 100,000 naira each with a phone. And we also have to remember that in the midst of all the mistakes that have been made when it comes to the arraignment of these boys, in the midst of that is the fact that some people actually committed crimes. Remember, when we saw that protest, people were vandalizing people's businesses, vandalizing government offices, running. I would never forget seeing those boys running with that generator. They were holding the generator, and it was quick march. They were running with the thing. So some crimes were committed around this time. And criminal behavior shouldn't be tolerated at all. How do we stop people? How do we judiciously stop people from committing these sorts of crimes, especially during protests? And juxtapose that with what we've seen now. Because for some people online, they may not be even talking about it really, but they're like, are we rewarding? What if some of these boys were guilty because no actual process now went through to see whether we had any guilty parties among these boys, because the juvenile court wasn't used, all of the things that could have been done were not done, and now you're giving that, isn't that some way of rewarding people for doing the wrong thing?
So let me just give you one example to answer that question. And it's a legitimate question, really. Yeah, it's right to play the advocate so that we can understand properly. First and foremost, you cannot say that somebody is a criminal suspect until you have conclusive evidence that should be presented in court. Now, in the case of one of them, engineer Khalid Aminu, who was featured on Inside Sources last week, he was in detention for 68 days in Kaduna. Listen to the story. And at the end of it all, the government dropped the charges. The lawyers looked at the evidence that they had, and he said there was basically nothing in this. The government itself now dropped the charges. So that tells you that there is no diligence, or there should be more diligence in the work that our law enforcement agencies do. If you think that somebody has broken the law, show us conclusively. Don't just scapegoat people. Don't say, oh, well, look, this one has been caught. He will have to pay. He or she will have to pay only if indeed he or she was the one responsible for the breaking of the law. You are right. There are people that we saw, but are those the ones that have been arrested? That's the big question. And if you look at the case of Engineer Khalid Aminu, you are not the ones that actually perpetrated the crimes. And government itself, after 68 days of violating their rights, said, you know what, we drop the charges, you guys can go.
And in the case of these boys, the charges have been dropped.
Same thing.
So
exactly the same thing.
So they can go and sin no more if any of them sinned before.
But now we're done here. But just to help me answer this one here. So we have this picture of a set of people that we saw in court, an open court, which shouldn't have been. And then we have this set of pictures of those that were handed over who didn't look like minors anymore in one of the states. I think those are the ones that are given 100,000 and a phone. So I don't know where those ones came from. I mean, is it that the investigations have completely stopped? That case is gone.
Well, I think the counsel...
Or they're going to be prosecuted at the state level.
Well, the counsel to the Attorney General has said in court that the case, I think, like lawyers say, they have entered nolly. Okay. So those charges have been dropped, and let me tell you, based on my experience, and I say this with all sense of responsibility, we really need to do a lot more in terms of diligent prosecution. When you see some of the preparations, and it's not I'm not saying this generally, but when you see some of the preparations for the prosecution, it screams mediocre. Now, there are people who do diligent work, but I have seen a lot of instances where there's too much mediocrity, too much inefficiency, that, I will always question some of these things when they come to the public, because the fundamental human rights of Nigerians are involved.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Laolu Akonde, for sharing your perspectives with us today.
Thank you.
Laolu Akonde is a former presidential aide, and thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
It was very insightful.
Thank you.
Well, your feedback, and I'll start with this one here from Professor Imono Enahina. He says, President-elect Donald Trump is expected to expand upon policies he implemented during his first term, such as those emphasizing limited government, states' rights, and lower taxes. It is anticipated that his administration will target many Biden administration policies, especially on the environment, immigration, and wars in the Middle East, Russia-Ukraine war, and the resurgent coup along the Sahel region of Africa. That's Professor Enahina.
Pastor Loafasi says the lesson from the recent U.S. presidential poll is that Americans love and respect their country and can do anything to remain on top of international political power play, which they know that DJT, that's Donald J. Trump, represents.
And that's all. Say thank you so much for letting us be a part of your evening. But like that last feedback, Americans love their country. I know Nigerians love their country. So let's love this country indeed. From where you are, I usually say this thing, from that point where you are. Obey the law where you are. Do your own part where you are. Before I blame Kayla, let me take care of my own eye. Right, so that I can see Kayla clearly. I'll do my part. Thank you so much. I'm Neil Tag. We have a good day.
Have a great day ahead. I'm Kayla Magwa.